come back and discuss.
This video is for you. I'm on my knees. I'm a social worker. My name is Becky. I live in Sweden. I work a lot with families from Africa. Please, I'm on my knees begging. Most of these European men you are getting married to, they are not normal. They have some mental issue.
What if marrying a European man was the worst mistake an African woman could make? A Swedish social worker says she's seen it. Dreams turning into abuse, control, and despair. Why does this keep happening? Let's find that out. The social worker's answer begins with the raw reality of her job. In Sweden's social services, she doesn't deal with the success stories, the smiling couples and Christmas cards, or the happy family snapshots for social media. Her world is the crisis calls at midnight, the emergency housing arrangements, the police reports with bruises carefully documented, and the silent tears of women who no longer know where home is. She explains that in her years of fieldwork, a pattern has emerged, and it is both disturbing and consistent. Women from East Africa, most often Kenya and Burundi, arrive in Sweden as new wives to European men they met through online dating, mutual friends, or even family introductions. In many cases, these marriages were arranged or fast-tracked, with minimal time spent truly getting to know one another. The first months can feel like a fairy tale, with expensive dinners, gifts, and a new apartment, but the shift comes quickly. The men, she says, are often struggling with significant mental health issues. Depression, substance abuse, paranoia, and untreated trauma, problems that were either hidden during courtship or dismissed as manageable, become daily landmines in the marriage. These men may appear well-adjusted in public, but at home, the instability turns into control, emotional volatility, and in too many cases, physical aggression. The social worker notes something particularly troubling. Many of these men have no history of such behavior with women of their ethnicity, raising uncomfortable questions about racial power dynamics, fetishization, and how far prejudice can shape treatment behind closed doors. For the women, the reality doesn't hit all at once. It creeps in gradually. First, there's the loss of independence. Many stop working or studying because their husbands insist they focus on the family, or because their resident status limits their employment options. Then there's the social isolation, relocation to small towns with no African community, cutting them off from the friends or contacts they might have had in larger cities. Soon, their entire world revolves around a man whose moods dictate the climate of the home. The abuse itself is often calculated rather than chaotic. Some men use immigration status as a weapon, threatening to withdraw sponsorship or report their wives to authorities if they don't behave. Others take control of finances completely, leaving the women without personal money. In the most severe cases, the control extends to monitoring phone calls, restricting movement, and dictating who they can speak to. These tactics, the social worker says, are as damaging as physical violence, sometimes even more so, because they erode the woman's sense of self until she no longer believes she has the right to resist. Her accounts also reveal how these relationships can be shaped by deep cultural misunderstandings. The women arrive with expectations about gender roles, family structure, and respect within a marriage, expectations rooted in their home culture. The men, meanwhile, may approach the marriage with stereotypes about African women: submissive, grateful, and willing to endure hardship for the sake of staying in Europe. When these false expectations collide, conflict is inevitable, and the woman is often the one left to absorb the consequences. For the social worker, these patterns are too clear to ignore. She has seen enough similar cases to believe they are part of a wider problem, not just unfortunate coincidences. She also warns that the public rarely hears about them, because many victims remain silent out of fear. Fear of losing children, fear of deportation, or fear of being judged by their communities for failing in a marriage that was supposed to be their escape from hardship. But if the signs are so strong and the risks so high, the question becomes, why do so many African women still see marrying a European man as their ticket to a better life? Long before a plane ticket is booked or a marriage certificate is signed, the seeds of these risky relationships are planted thousands of kilometers away in towns, villages, and cities across East Africa. The social worker explains that when she listens to the women's stories, there is often a common thread. The marriage did not start as a sudden decision. It began as an idea, a belief, and in many cases, a carefully nurtured dream sold to them by people they trusted. In communities in Kenya and Burundi, marrying a European man is often framed as a once-in-a-lifetime.
They have to tell us every day. It's horrible. You don't need to go through that. That is not a way to escape poverty. That's not the way. That is not a gateway to enrich yourself. Stop it. Do you mozungu, or you call it what? You're getting married to European men with underlying issues that are beating you. They're destroying your body. They're doing all kinds of horrible things to you that they cannot do it to their white women.
Opportunity. Relatives speak of distant cousins who made it abroad, now living in spacious houses, sending money home, and posting photos on social media that seem to prove life in Europe is endlessly comfortable. The unspoken message is that such a marriage is not just a personal choice. It is a duty to the family, a way to lift everyone's fortunes. For some women, the pressure is explicit. Uncles, aunts, or even parents hint that finding a wealthy foreign husband is a better investment than years spent in local jobs with low pay and little security. The myth gains strength through visible symbols of success. Imported clothes, money transfers, and family homes renovated with European earnings become proof that the strategy works. Conversations in markets and beauty salons repeat the same success stories, with little mention of the risks, cultural differences, or the fact that not all who leave for Europe send anything back. Technology has supercharged this narrative. Social media platforms, dating apps, and WhatsApp groups create a constant flow of images and videos portraying life in Europe as a glamorous adventure. Potential suitors present themselves with carefully curated photos, smiling in front of cars they may not own, posing in stylish apartments that could belong to friends, showing off vacations they took years ago. Many women do not have the means to verify what is real, and the visual evidence alone is often enough to build trust. Adding to the illusion is the selective storytelling of women who have already migrated. In many cases, those living in abusive marriages abroad will hide their struggles when speaking to people back home, fearing judgment or shame. They may post happy photos online while silently enduring hardship, creating a false impression for those who see only the curated version of their lives. The social worker notes that this silence is one of the most dangerous elements. It keeps the cycle going because the next woman sees only the glossy surface, not the reality beneath. In Kenya and Burundi, there is also the issue of opportunity, or the lack of it. For women with limited access to stable jobs, professional advancement, or property ownership, the offer of marriage to a European man appears not just attractive but rational. It seems like a way to leapfrog the structural inequalities at home. This is especially true for young women in rural areas, where traditional gender roles and economic stagnation leave few alternatives for upward mobility. The promise of a new life in Sweden, Germany, or the UK carries not just personal appeal, but also a sense of escape from systems that have already failed them. In these environments, questions about compatibility, cultural adaptation, or the man's personal history often take a backseat to the urgency of securing a better life. Families encourage quick engagements, reasoning that good opportunities don't come twice. In some cases, the wedding happens after only a few months of long-distance communication, with little to no background checks on the man's mental health, previous relationships, or actual living conditions abroad. By the time the woman arrives in Europe, the dream has been years in the making. And that makes the eventual disillusionment even more devastating. When the promised life begins to unravel, the woman is not just confronting her husband's behavior. She is also grappling with the collapse of an identity she has built around the idea of making it overseas. And this is where the problem deepens. Once in Europe, walking away from marriage is rarely as simple as packing a bag. Legal, financial, and emotional barriers close in quickly. That is the next chapter in this story, the trap that keeps women from leaving, even when the harm is undeniable. Let's pause for a second to say, big thank you to the Black Culture Diary community, where Black voices, stories, and legacies are preserved and amplified. By becoming a member, you're not just supporting the channel, you're becoming part of a powerful cultural movement. Let's continue. By the time the honeymoon glow fades and the truth of the marriage becomes impossible to ignore, many women find that their options have already shrunk to almost nothing. The social worker describes this as the invisible cage, a set of legal, financial, and psychological barriers that keep women in place even when they know they are being harmed. One of the most immediate barriers is immigration status. In Sweden, as in many European countries, a spouse's residency rights often depend on the continuation of the marriage for a set period. Leaving too soon can mean losing the legal right to remain in the country, and in some cases, it can lead to deportation. For women who have left jobs, sold belongings, or borrowed money to make the move, the idea of returning home is not just financially humiliating, it is socially devastating. They risk facing family members who invested in their journey and now expect them to be sending money back. Financial dependency is equally crippling. Many women arrive without savings, assuming they will be supported until they can work. But access to employment is not always immediate. Language requirements, recognition of foreign qualifications, and even spousal control over work permissions can keep them out of the labor market for months or years. If the husband controls all income and bank accounts, even buying a bus ticket to a friend's house can become a challenge. This level of control is often compounded by strategic withholding, men who delay helping their wives get personal bank accounts or refuse to give them access to household finances. Housing is another powerful lever of control. In cases where the husband owns or rents the home in his name alone, leaving the marriage often means instant homelessness. While Sweden offers emergency shelters, space is limited, and many immigrant women hesitate to approach them, fearing that doing so will trigger legal proceedings they can't navigate. Those with children face an even harsher choice: leave and risk losing custody, or stay and endure the abuse. Then there is the psychological conditioning that has been quietly building since arrival. The social worker describes women who, after months or years of isolation, begin to doubt their judgment. They've been told repeatedly that they are lucky to be in Europe, that no one back home would care for them, that they are too difficult, too ungrateful, or too dependent to survive alone. In such a mental state, the idea of starting over, learning the language, finding a job, and navigating unfamiliar systems can feel like an impossible mountain to climb. Adding to this is the fear of the unknown. Many women have little information about what life would look like if they left. How would they secure housing? Could they keep their children in school? Would the authorities take them seriously? The absence of clear answers makes the abusive situation feel like a lesser risk. And when the husband has threatened to use the legal system against them by accusing them of fraud, reporting them to immigration, or manipulating custody arrangements, the fear becomes paralyzing. Social stigma also plays a part. In their home communities, news of a failed marriage can spread quickly. The women may be branded as troublemakers or accused of being unfaithful. For those who left home as symbols of hope, the shame of returning with nothing, perhaps even with children but no husband, can be unbearable. This stigma is not imagined. It is reinforced by whispers from back home, where people question how someone could fail in Europe, a place they imagine as a land of endless opportunity. These layers of entrapment create a grim reality. Many women choose to endure years of abuse rather than face the uncertainty of leaving. The social worker says she has seen women stay for a decade or more, holding out hope that things will improve, or fearing that life outside the marriage would be worse. By the time some finally break free, the damage to their mental health, self-worth, and financial stability is often profound. Yet, as suffocating as this trap is, it doesn't appear out of nowhere. The conditions for it are often set in motion before the women ever set foot in Sweden, shaped by misconceptions and false assurances from both sides of the world. Which brings us to the next critical question. How are these illusions maintained so effectively that women enter such situations unaware of the risks? Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. The social worker says the persistence of this dream is not accidental. It is actively reinforced by a web of stories, cultural expectations, and selective truths that operate on both sides of the world. Once the idea of marrying a European man takes root, it is fed by a constant flow of images, testimonies, and social pressure designed, intentionally or not, to keep it alive. One of the strongest drivers is the curated success story. Families back home who have relatives living in Europe often highlight only the visible wins: the remittances sent every month, the photos in winter coats, the occasional video call from a bright, well-furnished living room. Struggles, if mentioned at all, are framed as minor inconveniences rather than serious problems. This selective sharing becomes a powerful advertisement for the European marriage plan, convincing others that the rewards far outweigh the risks. The illusion is further reinforced by the silence of those already living the nightmare. Many women in abusive marriages abroad choose not to reveal their situation to friends and family back home. In part, it's self-protection. Admitting the truth might bring shame, gossip, or accusations of failure. In other cases, it's about protecting their children from stigma or keeping the door open to financial help from relatives who believe everything is fine. By not speaking out, these women unintentionally become part of the cycle, serving as living proof that marrying a European works, even as their private reality tells a different story. Social media has amplified this effect to an unprecedented degree. Platforms like Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok are flooded with polished portrayals of life in Europe, vacations, gifts, luxury shopping, and glamorous events. For women in rural towns or crowded cities in East Africa, these images can feel like a window into a better world. Few realize how much of it is staged or how often the person posting is masking hardship behind the camera. The gap between perception and reality grows wider with every filtered image. Then there's the role of cultural aspiration. In some communities, marrying a foreigner is still seen as a mark of personal success, a validation of beauty, charm, or social status. The foreign spouse becomes a symbol, not just a partner, and the marriage itself is treated as an achievement worth pursuing, regardless of the individual's character. This mindset makes it harder to scrutinize the suitor's behavior or background. Questioning him too much might be seen as ruining your chance. So many women avoid asking hard questions until it is too late. The men themselves can play an active role in sustaining the illusion. Some know exactly how to present themselves to fit the fantasy, especially when courting from abroad. They emphasize generosity, promise opportunities, and paint life in Sweden as free from hardship. When doubts arise, they counter with reassurances or suggest that any skepticism is rooted in mistrust or disrespect. For women who have already invested emotionally, or whose families are pressuring them to move forward, these reassurances can feel like enough to override their instincts. The social worker notes that even well-meaning relatives and community elders sometimes contribute to the problem. They may encourage marriage based on outdated beliefs about life in Europe, assuming that simply living there guarantees security and comfort. Without first-hand knowledge of the challenges immigrant women face, especially those in interracial marriages, they underestimate the risks and overestimate the benefits. Perhaps the most insidious factor is the timeline. These relationships often progress quickly, sometimes from first contact to marriage in less than a year. The rapid pace leaves little room for thorough background checks, extended visits, or realistic conversations about expectations. By the time a woman begins to sense potential red flags, she may already be legally married, financially committed, and emotionally entangled. This machinery of illusion ensures that, even as stories of abuse and hardship surface, the success narrative remains dominant. Women continue to step into these marriages believing that their story will be different, that they will be the exception. The social worker calls this the most dangerous assumption of all, because it blinds people to warning signs until they are in too deep. But illusions, no matter how carefully built, cannot shield reality forever. At some point, the truth of the relationship and the cost of staying become impossible to ignore. And that brings us to the final and most difficult question. When the dream shatters, what can be done to protect, empower, and free those trapped inside it? For the women already trapped, escape is not just a matter of walking out the door. It's about dismantling the systems of control that have kept them bound. For those still considering such marriages, it's about ensuring they never step into the trap in the first place. The social worker stresses that the first line of defense is information before migration. Outreach programs in countries like Kenya and Burundi could equip women with practical knowledge about European marriage laws, immigrant rights, and how residency status works. Too often, women leave home without any understanding of the legal structures that will govern their lives once abroad. If they knew in advance how much their residency might depend on staying married, or how to secure independent work rights, they could negotiate relationships from a position of awareness rather than dependence. Another crucial step is building independent lifelines from day one. Upon arrival in Sweden or any European country, Newly married women should be encouraged to open their bank accounts, register with local job centers, and start language courses as soon as possible. These are not just tools for personal development. They are safety nets that make leaving an unsafe situation feasible. Even small steps toward financial and social independence can weaken the grip of an abusive partner. Support networks are equally vital. Community organizations, immigrant associations, and women's advocacy groups can offer safe spaces where women can share experiences without fear of judgment or retaliation. These spaces are not just for emotional support. They can also provide referrals to legal aid, emergency housing, and counseling. In Sweden, there are shelters and social service programs specifically for abused women. But many immigrants don't know they exist or assume they are only for citizens. Breaking that misconception is key. On the legal side, policy reforms could make a significant difference. The social worker argues for systems that allow immigrant spouses to secure residency independently of their marriage after a shorter period, particularly in cases involving abuse. While some European countries already have provisions for this, the process can be lengthy, intimidating, and poorly explained to newcomers. Streamlining it and providing clear translated information upon arrival could remove one of the most powerful weapons abusers wield, the threat of deportation. Prevention also depends on changing the narrative back home. The illusion of the perfect European marriage will not disappear until there are visible, honest conversations about its risks. This could mean creating outreach campaigns in African media that share the stories of women who face difficulties abroad, not to spread fear, but to balance the fantasy with reality. It also means encouraging returned migrants to speak openly about their experiences, even when they are not the success stories people expect to hear. For those already in dangerous situations, early intervention can be the difference between survival and tragedy. Teachers, doctors, neighbors, and community leaders in Sweden can play a role by recognizing signs of abuse and knowing where to refer victims. Many cases come to light only when the abuse escalates to the point of police involvement. The social worker believes that by training professionals to identify warning signs earlier, missed appointments, visible anxiety in public, sudden withdrawal from social contact, women could get help before the situation becomes life-threatening. Ultimately, breaking the cycle requires a combination of individual empowerment, systemic support, and cultural honesty. Women need the tools to protect themselves, the laws to back them up, and the truthful stories to guide their decisions. Without all three, the same patterns will repeat, drawing new victims into the same web. The social worker's warning is not meant to condemn all cross-cultural marriages. It is a call to treat them with the seriousness they deserve. A marriage between an African woman and a European man can succeed, but only when built on equality, respect, and mutual understanding, not illusions and dependency. For too long, the conversation has focused on the dream of a better life abroad without addressing the risks. Now, she says, it's time to flip that balance, because when the dream turns into a nightmare, the cost is far too high. And if the stories she's seen are any indication, the most dangerous part is not what happens after the wedding. It's everything the woman didn't know before she said yes. How many more women must be trapped before the illusion is broken? Would the dream still be tempting if the full truth were told back home? Let us know in the comment section. Who benefits from keeping this cycle alive? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.